She was never pregnant at all. Instead, the videos embolden conspiracy theorists. They're calling it Megspiracy, and the pair are being subjected to yet more merciless ridicule. Another lie. And by the way, Meghan, if you don't like me calling you a liar, just sue me, and we'll go through all this in court. For Harry and Meghan, it's more a case of never reign and never abstain, especially when it comes to nauseating self-publicity, which invariably backfires. Sometimes, I don't know, words seem superfluous really. Meghan shared that bedside twerking video, taken shortly apparently before she gave birth to Lilibet. Remember the child that she named after the Queen's private nickname that was given to by Duke of Edinburgh, without getting permission from the Queen.
Here's Morgan sitting across from his interviewer, wearing that familiar smirk, the kind that screams he knows more than he's saying. The moment felt calm, almost casual, and then boom, he dropped a statement that exploded online instantly. Within days, 57,000 complaints flooded ITV, demanding he be removed, all because he said out loud what millions were already whispering behind closed doors. Now here's the part that makes everything feel unsettling. Meghan Markle herself, often portrayed as constantly under attack, reportedly stepped in behind the scenes and contacted his bosses directly. Not through official processes, not through public statements, but with quiet pressure that stayed hidden until after Morgan was already gone. PI didn't even learn about it until the decision was final. Let that sink in.
This case about whether you think the birth was real, whether you think there was a surrogate, whether you think Meghan was wearing a moon bump. The fact is, Harry and Meghan lied. Buckingham Palace lied on their behalf. There was a complete cover-up over the birth of Prince.
A woman who frequently speaks about free speech and standing up to bullies was allegedly working quietly to shut down a journalist for one simple reason. He didn't believe her version of events. And later, as PI himself said, with noticeable satisfaction, he remains completely canceled. Why? Because truth has a way of circling back, and the receipts Piers claims to have are intense. What stunned him most, he explained, was just how far Meghan seemed willing to go to control the narrative. This wasn't about hurt feelings over a TV comment. This was a calculated, behind-the-scenes push to shut down a career entirely. All because he refused to go along with the polished fairy tale that had been carefully sold to the public. But this is where things take a darker turn. Every inconsistency, every timeline that didn't line up, every unanswered detail, none of it has been clearly explained. Not by Meghan, not by Harry, not by the palace, not by anyone.
Meghan filed a formal complaint with ITV, a British station, over Piers Morgan's comments about her. That was before Morgan's sudden exit as host of Good Morning Britain.
And when someone puts this much effort into silencing critics, instead of clearing the air, people start asking the obvious question. What are they hiding? Because what observers have pieced together doesn't look like random coincidence anymore. It looks like a pattern. One so uncomfortable that even some of Meghan's strongest supporters have quietly started asking questions they never expected to ask. Now let's talk about the bump, because this is where strange turns downright bizarre.
From where I sit, because clearly she was trying to put huge pressure on my bosses to take action against me.
Catherine, Princess of Wales, stood outside the Lindo wing just hours after giving birth. Heels on, hair styled, makeup flawless, holding her newborn for the world to see. She did it 3 times, calm, composed, and completely transparent. It wasn't about showing off. It was tradition, openness, and sharing a moment with the public. Meghan, on the other hand, turned pregnancy into a mystery where the details kept shifting. One week, the bump looked large, round, and impossible to ignore. She cradled it constantly, lowered herself into chairs slowly, and moved with extra care like she was carrying something delicate. Then just days later, sometimes within the same week, new photos appeared where the bump looked smaller, flatter, and placed differently. And before anyone jumps in saying it's just angles or clothing, let's be real, people aren't clueless. Royal watchers have analyzed images like this for decades. They know what pregnancy looks like under non-stop cameras. And in several video clips, the movement itself raised even more eyebrows than the photos ever could. Meghan was seen moving slowly, hands locked around her stomach, every step measured and controlled, like she couldn't risk a wrong move. Each appearance showed careful pacing, guarded posture, and deliberate motion that screamed caution. But then, out of nowhere,
Harry and Meghan, ongoing debate, their war with the royal family, war against the monarchy, their specific, constant referencing to the fact that they believe they were driven out of here because of racism in Britain. Meghan wrote private letters to King Charles naming two royals who she accuses of taking part in those supposedly troubling conversations about Archie's skin colour. I was rejected by Meghan Markle. It's so utterly ridiculous. And yet people like you promote these scurrilous rumours.
But there's got to be a reason that you're so angry about.
No, I'm not angry with it. Here's my thing with it. I'm angry at their hypocrisy. I'm very angry about the ongoing attacks and diminishing of the reputation of the royal family and the monarchy.
other appearances told a totally different story. Suddenly, she's climbing stairs quickly, turning on a dime, bending down with no hesitation, moving like nothing is slowing her down at all. Yes, pregnancy affects everyone differently, no debate there. But this wasn't a slow shift over months. These were sharp, dramatic changes happening within days, sometimes even hours. One moment she looked so pregnant she appeared barely mobile. The next, she's moving with surprising ease in 5-inch heels like it's no big deal at all. People noticed immediately. Screenshots started spreading side by side. Timelines popped up everywhere, laying the inconsistencies out plain and clear. This wasn't one awkward photo or bad angle. It kept happening again and again. Heavily pregnant when the cameras were perfectly placed, suddenly agile when they weren't. That pattern became impossible to ignore. And once the internet locks in, there's no turning back.
How else are you being sort of suspicious and secretive around labor and birth? And people theorized and claimed that the couple needed time to stage a story because Meghan didn't actually deliver the children.
The comparisons got ruthless. Royal forums lit up fast. Comment sections filled with the same question repeating over and over again. How does a bump behave like that? How does someone move one way today and completely different the next? The thought nobody wanted to say out loud started forming, and it made everyone uneasy. And if the photos raised eyebrows, the alleged documents Piers Morgan referenced pushed things even further. Claims surfaced that were never clearly denied. Internal scheduling notes reportedly circulated, tracking Meghan's appointments, movements, and official engagements during the pregnancy. And if those documents were even partly accurate, they didn't just challenge the public timeline, they shattered it. We're talking about hospital appointments, allegedly logged on days when Meghan was photographed attending events across London. Not tight scheduling, not brief overlaps. Entire days where paperwork placed her in one location while photos placed her somewhere else entirely.
Did Meghan Markle use a surrogate? That's been something posited literally for well over 3 years when it comes to her firstborn son Archie and even her daughter Lilibet. And many people even wonder, are their children even real?
You can't be in two places at once. Pregnancy timelines don't bend to convenience. You can't reschedule being 9 months pregnant just because your calendar says so. And then came the detail that made even casual observers stop scrolling: the home birth promise. Through insiders and carefully placed stories, Meghan reportedly made it clear she wanted a home birth at Frogmore Cottage. Natural, private, and perfectly aligned with the image she was presenting. Rejecting royal tradition and doing things her own way sounded believable. The public accepted it instantly. Why wouldn't they? Then May 6th, 2019 arrived, and without a single word of explanation, she gave birth at Portland Hospital in London. Now, let's be clear. Hospital births are normal, necessary, and often the safest option. No one is questioning that medically. The issue was the silence. No explanation. No short statement about why plans changed. No mention of medical advice. No acknowledgement that the story had flipped completely overnight. Just silence.
Did Buckingham Palace or Prince William set a trap for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle? And were they gullible enough to fall into
Loud, awkward, suspicious silence. When you build a public narrative around privacy and natural choices, people expect at least a brief explanation when it suddenly collapses. But there was nothing. The palace didn't clarify. Meghan didn't address it. The story just changed like everyone was supposed to forget it ever existed. And that silence pushed people to dig backward, rechecking statements, replaying interviews, questioning how much of the carefully crafted narrative was ever real in the first place. Because when one major promise disappears without any explanation, people naturally start wondering what else they were sold that could vanish just as quietly. This didn't look like a mistake. It didn't feel like confusion. It looked calculated. Harry and Meghan appeared to set the institution up to look careless. as if it were hiding information or twisting the story, when in reality, they were the ones controlling the moves behind the curtain. P.I. Morgan latched onto this immediately, and for good reason. It exposed something crucial about how Meghan seemed to operate. Every detail had to be managed. Every announcement had to happen on her schedule. Every piece of information had to protect her image.
This is absolutely insane that they thought they could get away with it, especially Meghan Markle and Harry. The con of the century, 2 cons of the century in the form of 2 royal children included in the line of succession.
This wasn't about sharing a happy moment with the public. This was about directing every step, even if it meant making the palace look disorganized or misleading. And once people noticed that level of planning, that level of control, they couldn't unsee it. The fairy tale started cracking fast. Underneath the glossy surface was something far less magical and far more deliberate than anyone wanted to admit. This is where Meghan's victim narrative really begins to fall apart, and it's uncomfortable to watch. During the Oprah interview, Meghan presented an emotional picture. She described herself as isolated, unsupported, and alone while pregnant. Trapped inside an institution that didn't care about her well-being. The story was powerful, it hit hard, and it worked. Millions felt sympathy for someone who appeared abandoned at her most vulnerable moment. But then information surfaced that told a very different story. Internal memos reportedly emerged, and according to sources, no one has successfully denied they exist. These documents suggested palace staff were instructed to accommodate every request Meghan made. Not when possible, not when convenient, immediately. Schedules were rearranged, commitments were canceled. Staff allegedly worked double shifts and handled last-minute wardrobe changes without hesitation. This didn't look like neglect. This looked like an institution bending over backwards to keep her satisfied. The most damaging detail involved meetings and briefings. According to the paperwork, Meghan declined multiple invitations to attend important discussions. She simply chose not to attend.
Put out a statement saying that the Duchess had been safely delivered of a son at a certain time in the morning. Don't forget that the first statement they put out was the wrong one. And then they had to correct it because, of course, Harry and Meghan gave him a different story. So the palace already has that credibility that, hey, we put out something, but it's not us putting this news.
Later, those same absences were presented publicly as exclusion, like doors were slammed shut and she was being frozen out. Do you see what happened here? The doors weren't closed. They were wide open. Meghan chose not to walk through them and later claimed she'd been locked out. That's not victimhood. That's narrative control at the highest level. P.I. Morgan repeated this point again and again. He argued this wasn't oppression. It was indulgence being recast as mistreatment. The institution reportedly gave her everything she asked for. Requests that would have had anyone else told to wait were fast-tracked. Staff were pushed to their limits, bending protocol, stretching resources, doing everything possible to keep her comfortable. And after all that effort, after all that accommodation and special treatment, the public was told a story of mistreatment, abandonment, isolation, and suffering. If those memos are accurate, and remember, no one has denied they exist, they don't show a woman left behind by staff. They show exhausted employees running themselves into the ground, trying to meet demands that were never going to be enough. At that point, the story changed. It stopped being about someone mistreated. It became about someone accommodated beyond reason and still claiming victimhood. Once people saw that pattern, once reality started bending to fit a narrative, the conversation shifted in a way that couldn't be undone. The foundation really cracked here because once people believed she may not have been honest about how staff treated her, a bigger question exploded.
Pregnancy video that made the entire world cringe from secondhand embarrassment, or talking about her experiences on podcasts or things like that, or just posting a lot more pictures. It has drawn a lot of attention to the controversies surrounding her kids, her pregnancies, how the children came into the world, the whole thing. Everything she's done has only drawn more speculation and brought the controversies back up about how Meghan and Harry have handled all of this, as well as the rumors that perhaps they used a surrogate.
If that part wasn't true, what else hasn't been straight with the public? This is where everything went uncomfortably quiet, and where P.I. Morgan's argument became much harder to brush off. With all the allegations, all the inconsistencies, and all the supposed evidence floating around, Meghan's response was nothing. Total silence. No statement, no clarification, no friends jumping in to defend her, no palace explanation, no legal warnings, absolutely nothing. And for someone known for quickly correcting stories she dislikes, someone who has taken newspapers to court and used friendly leaks to protect her image, that silence was impossible to ignore. And P.I. Morgan, being P.I. Morgan, didn't let it slide for a second. He repeated it everywhere he spoke. Silence, he said, isn't neutral. It's not taking the high road. Silence sends a message, especially when serious claims are backed by alleged proof. And online, you could actually see the shift happening in real time. People who once defended Meghan fiercely, who used to shut down any criticism immediately, started feeling uneasy. The tone changed fast. It went from, this is just media bullying, to, okay, then why won't she address it? If it's not true, why not explain? As the silence dragged on, the questions grew louder and sharper. Critics rushed in to fill the gap. More analysis, more side-by-side comparisons, more timelines. Old clips resurfaced. Videos were broken down frame by frame. Those internal documents were shared, reshared, and examined from every angle. And with no pushback, no one stepping forward to say this is false. Speculation hardened into suspicion. Not because P.I. proved everything, but because Meghan's team chose not to disprove anything at all. What made the silence even stranger was Harry's complete absence. This is the same man who rebuilt his public image around protecting his family from lies and media pressure. He's spoken again and again about defending his wife from false narratives. Yet when direct allegations surfaced about pregnancy timelines and birth details, he said nothing. No denial, no defense. Not even a vague appeal to privacy.
I looked up, her mouth set in a particular way. Things were getting serious. I said to Meg, my love, you need a push. I didn't tell her why. I didn't tell her about the cord. I didn't tell her about the likelihood of an emergency C-section. But I said, you better push that damn baby out, regardless of what the doctor says. I see danger and I'm about to panic. All right, get that baby out of there. The doctor's saying don't push, but don't listen to her. I say to push, which is exactly what a father who's looking at a baby being born and knows nothing about the process would say. I said, you better give me everything you got, and she did.
If someone were spreading serious claims about your wife, wouldn't you speak up? Wouldn't you demand corrections, push back hard, or at least say something? But there was nothing. And in the court of public opinion, silence like that doesn't read as calm or dignified. It reads like avoidance. It reads like someone worried that responding could open doors they can't shut again. Fair or not, that kind of silence starts to look like guilt to a lot of people. Once those doubts settled in, nothing was off limits anymore. People began rewatching everything with fresh eyes. Even the Oprah interview, once treated as untouchable, was suddenly back under the microscope. P.I. Morgan dissected it moment by moment, frame by frame, in a way that unsettled even some of his critics. He pointed out pauses that felt just a little too precise, emotions that built, peaked, and faded on perfect cue, tears that welled up but never quite fell, stopping just short of smudging makeup, according to observers. And this is what truly upset people. The vulnerability didn't feel spontaneous anymore. It felt rehearsed. And once that impression took hold, it became impossible for many viewers to see the interview the same way again. It didn't feel fake, but it definitely felt rehearsed, practiced, carefully delivered by someone who knew exactly which emotional buttons to press to get the reaction she wanted. And then P.I. Morgan took it even further in a move people called either sharp or ruthless. He lined up the Oprah interview next to Meghan's earlier podcasts and past interviews. Same cadence, same pacing, same emotional buildup, same dramatic release, same carefully chosen words, same theatrical pauses. And once people saw it laid out like that, they couldn't unsee it. To observers, this didn't look like a woman spontaneously opening up about pain. It looked like someone who had refined a performance across multiple platforms until it was nearly flawless.
This is a 2-hour trash-a-thon of our royal family, of the monarchy, of everything the Queen has worked so hard for, and it's all being done as Prince Philip lies in hospital.
Once he said it out loud, and once viewers started spotting the pattern themselves, everything shifted. What once felt raw and genuine suddenly felt produced, carefully engineered for emotional impact. That's the danger of being too polished, too perfect in vulnerability. Eventually, people stop seeing emotion and start seeing technique. But this is where P.I. made his most explosive claim yet, the one that brought him the most backlash and also hit hardest with skeptics. He argued that motherhood itself had become Meghan's shield, her ultimate layer of protection from criticism by centering her public image around pregnancy, fragility, and emotional struggle. He said she created what amounted to a cultural force field. Suddenly, questioning inconsistencies looked heartless. Asking basic questions became an attack on a pregnant woman. Any criticism, no matter how measured, was reframed as cruelty, bullying, or worse. And culturally, that works. Society is conditioned to protect expectant mothers, to show grace, to avoid confrontation at all costs. Observers argued that instinct was being used intentionally. Whenever pressure increased, the focus shifted back to pregnancy, stress, and emotional hardship. And that's where the conversation ended. No debate, no follow-up, case closed. He wasn't saying motherhood was fake. He was saying it was being used, deployed as a narrative shield. Whenever scrutiny got too close, honest questions suddenly became morally off limits. And whether people agreed with him or not, one thing became impossible to ignore. There was a pattern. Every time difficult questions surfaced, the focus snapped back to Meghan's suffering as a pregnant woman. Just like that, the original issues were buried under accusations of cruelty for even asking. And once people noticed that pattern, it lost its power. Instead of silencing critics, it energized them. Because people started asking the question that changes everything. If the story is solid, if the truth holds up, if nothing is being hidden.
The rumors of possible use of a surrogate were born. It's also where Meghan and Harry made some major mistakes that only fueled all of these rumors and issues surrounding their handling of the children, the privacy, all.
Why does it need this much protection? When all the pieces were laid out together, the photo inconsistencies, the alleged documents, the sudden story changes, the extended silence, this stopped being about pregnancy images or hospital timelines. It became about trust, about credibility, about whether anything Meghan and Harry had told the public could still be taken at face value. Because here's the harsh reality. Once people feel like they've been sold a story that doesn't quite add up, they start questioning everything, not with outrage, but with suspicion. And that kind of doubt doesn't shout, it lingers. It follows every interview, every public appearance, every carefully chosen phrase. The damage didn't come from one accusation, it came from the accumulation of unanswered questions. It didn't come from one moment, it came from the buildup. Inconsistency stacked on top of inconsistency until the whole foundation finally cracked. Shifting timelines, conflicting schedules, carefully staged moments, pre-written announcements, and then that familiar silence. When all of it was examined together, it formed a picture many people couldn't ignore. Millions struggled to match those details with the victim narrative they were told to accept. The pieces simply didn't line up anymore. What made the contrast even more damaging was the comparison people couldn't stop making. Catherine, Princess of Wales, stood outside the hospital just hours after giving birth. Heels on, hairstyled, makeup done, 3 separate times. She shared those moments openly with the public. Transparent, traditional, no mystery. Meghan did the opposite. She turned everything into a puzzle. The story changed more than once. Details shifted. The public was kept guessing.
Hearing from someone else, a close friend of Meghan's appearing on UK TV saying there's proof, emails and texts to back up Meghan's account of her mental health issues.
I know that the family and the staff were well aware of the extent of it, and though their recollections may vary, ours don't, because we lived through it with them. And there are many emails and texts to support that.
Are you saying that the whole family and the whole staff knew that there was a woman within the palace walls who was deeply struggling?
And then, when questions naturally followed, the response wasn't clarity, it was frustration. Secrecy created suspicion. Inconsistency created doubt. And when explanations were replaced with silence, when basic questions were met with accusations of cruelty instead of answers, people started connecting the dots themselves. Right or wrong, they drew their own conclusions. Those conclusions didn't fade away. They hardened over time into something Meghan may never fully escape. This wasn't a scandal that exploded overnight. It crept in slowly, quietly, relentlessly, until ignoring it became impossible. And once that level of doubt takes hold, once public trust cracks this deeply, it doesn't heal easily. Every future claim gets examined more closely. Every emotional appeal is met with skepticism instead of sympathy. The benefit of the doubt disappears. That's the real damage here, not embarrassment, not even the individual allegations. It's the collapse of credibility. Because once credibility is questioned this deeply, it never comes back the same way again. Now, every time Meghan speaks, every interview, every statement, every carefully chosen word, part of the audience isn't listening to understand. They're listening for the next inconsistency, the next contradiction, the next sign that this was always more performance than truth. And that's exactly what P.I. Morgan set out to do. Not to prove one claim beyond all doubt, but to plant enough unanswered questions that full belief would never return. If you watch this and have thoughts, drop them in the comments below. If this breakdown made you see things differently, hit subscribe and stay locked in for more deep dives like this. Don't forget to like the video and share it with someone who needs to see it.